Yesterday, Zack Polanski was elected to the Green Party leadership role after a huge landslide, winning 85% of the vote. Yet it didn't take long for the attacks to come his way. Labour released 2 attack ads targeting Zack, one on a 12-year-old Sun article. And by the way, when I write the Sun in the script, I always put the star between the S and the N. I'm never writing S-U-N. Fuck him. 12-year-old Sun article and on NATO. Meet Zack Polanski. This is the person who the Greens just elected as the new leader. And as you can see, there's an attached image. It says, has the time come when we can burn all those uncomfortable push-up bras? Hypnotherapist Zack Polanski reckons so. He says he can boost your cup size using the mind alone. This is an extremely new approach, but I can see it becoming popular very quickly because it's so safe and a lot cheaper than the boob job, says Zack. This was then shared by multiple Labour MPs. Joe Stevens MP said, "Oh, it's just awful." Before that, actually, I do happen to think that genocide is awful, something your government is supporting. Rose Writing, she shared that and she said, "So this is who the Greens think should lead their party. Says it all." This is all they have, by the way, a 12-year-old article. Now, Zack went on Good Morning Britain, where they spent the first 3 minutes talking about that article from 12 years ago.
Green Party leader Zack Polanski, sorry for giving women breast enlargements by hypnosis. Not the start you'd imagine.
Well, I wouldn't believe everything you read in The Sun, and this was a story from about 12 years ago. I've apologised then, I apologise now. One of my favourite politicians, Tony Benn, said, I don't care about where you came from, I care about where you're going. And where I'm going is to tackle inequality, to tackle the climate crisis, to lower people's bills.
But just to understand, because of course this would be the first time that very many of our viewers will see you as the Green Party leader. Just explain, at the time, you believed that through hypnotherapy you could enlarge a woman's breasts and charge people for that. What was your thinking then, and how did your thinking change subsequently?
Anyone who believed that would, that would be problematic, and that's nothing I ever believed. I was approached by The Sun. They approached me to say, would you like to do an article about body image? I said yes. I was misrepresented. I apologised a day later. That was 12 years ago, a long time before I was anywhere near politics. And as I say, since then, I have a strong track record of standing up for social justice, standing up to lower people's bills, standing up for marginalised people in this country. And that's a platform I'm very proud to stand on.
So categorically, you never believed through hypnotherapy you could enlarge women's breasts?
I mean, does anyone believe that? And actually, lots of men got in touch with me asking if it could help with other body parts. I've never done it for men. I've never done it for women. And that's not something I believe in. I want to tax multimillionaires and billionaires. I've come on your show on my first day as Green Party leader, and this is the conversation that we want to have.
We're just trying to clear it up.
I've apologised for it. I've said it doesn't represent
me. But did you
me.
say to women, you can imagine you have bigger boobs?
No, I didn't say that.
Did you hypnotise or hypnotherapise women to think that?
I've never hypnotised and charged a woman.
Did you tell women to picture themselves with bigger boobs?
This is such an absurd conversation. When these questions come from legacy and mainstream media, it often sounds like it's trying to silence left-wing politicians who are saying, I want to look at inequality in this country. I want to look at the things that actually matter, like the ongoing genocide in Gaza, the fact there's homeless people in the street, the fact I spent a couple of hours yesterday with migrant workers who are saying they're not even being paid a basic wage in this country to run our national health service. I think these are the things that matter to people.
What I want to know is, why is Ed Balls so interested? I wonder if Labour are attacking Zack because they're jealous of his growth policy. Sorry, I could not myself. That was terrible. Now, legacy media needs to die. And I thought he did a pretty good job trying to get back to the issues. But I tell you what's absurd, right? The government pushes out an attack ad on Zack. Then Ed Balls, who is the husband of Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, comes after him with the same attack a day later. This is the problem with the corporate media. It's a joke. How is that accountability when on some occasions he's interviewed his own wife, right? Trust in the media is low, and this is why, right? The corporate media don't want to talk about taxing the rich because it's the same people who own the media who will be affected by those taxes. And people are sick, just sick of this nonsense. Now, Labour's second attack ad was on Zack's views on NATO. They tweeted, "New Green Party leader Zack Polanski seeks to undermine our membership of NATO. At such a serious time, this is completely irresponsible position to take." Now, I actually would consider that a smear because that's not really what Zack said. His view on NATO is nuanced. It's not to just unilaterally leave. Plus, we do need a broad conversation about independence from Washington on our foreign policy. I mean, isn't that what all the right-wingers do? And Nigel Farage say, let's take back control, right? Well, you want to take back control and hand it to Trump because you're best mates with Trump. So actually, I think it's a sensible conversation to say, maybe we can have sovereignty over our own foreign policy. Now, Tom Watson, I mean, he's usually been pretty quiet, but he's decided to weigh in on the election. Takeover complete. I mean, he's joking, right? I mean, how is this a takeover? Zack was the deputy leader, right? He was part of the team that won 4 MPs and 800 councillors. He won 85% of the vote, so he won with existing and new members. It's the exact same arguments used against Jeremy Corbyn. Now, Tom, right? Tom Watson, he likes hostile takeovers. He doesn't mind when it's the corporations and big business taking over the party of Labour, but when it's the membership deciding, well, it's terrible. Now, I caught up with Zack earlier today to discuss his victory and the media attacks. Zack, congratulations on your huge landslide win to become Green Party leader. How do you feel?
I feel amazing. It still hasn't quite sunk in. And honestly, coming to turn left feels a little bit like a victory lap. I've spent the last 2 days going on lots of hostile media organisations, which have been good to speak to, but it's really, really nice to feel like in some ways I'm coming home.
Look, you've won the leadership. Your focus then was on the membership, right? But now you don't need to do that. You need to focus on all voters. How do you win over those voters, especially those who don't identify as left-wing or have never considered themselves a Green or wanting to vote for the Green Party before?
I think it's by focusing on policy, a relentless focus on inequality. We need to tax wealth and not work. And what I mean by that is making sure we've got a wealth tax, we're nationalising our public services, that we're challenging inequality in our workplaces, so we're standing by trade unions and in solidarity. We know all of these things are popular across the British public. Very often people are put off by it because not the ideas of the policies, but they're worried that the Green Party can't win. This was in the past. And I think what we really have to demonstrate, and we have shown, is that where we do campaign, we can and we will win. So it's really about maximising this right across England and Wales and building up that membership base.
Yeah, so the day of your election, Labour ramped up their attacks. They first started with that Sun article, which has been misrepresented. Now they're saying you oppose NATO. What's your response to their attacks?
I mean, the first thing is it's quite flattering, right? The party of government could be doing anything with their time, you know, like dealing with homelessness or challenging the fact that our NHS is crumbling or not arming a genocide in Gaza. But no, what are they actually doing? They are sending petty tweets out rather than, you know, what has traditionally been in this country, a congratulations to the new leader of a party. I didn't particularly want that from the Labour Party. But the idea that straight out the gate, they went on the attack. I've also heard an MP today as well wrote a whole op-ed piece attacking me too. And do you know what? I'm incredibly flattered. I think these are all things that show this Labour Party are absolutely threatened and rattled by the Green Party. And so they should be. And that's exactly where they should be. On the actual substance of the issue that you're talking about, Green Party policy is to stay in NATO and reform it from within. That reform is around denuclearizing, so everyone giving up their nuclear weapons. If we can make that happen, I'd still absolutely, totally support that. And that is my view. Since we made that policy, though, Donald Trump has been elected as president of the White House. This is our president of America in the White House. It's been a long day. This is a misogynist, racist, fascist. And yes, we should have democratic relationships with him or diplomatic relationships. He is the elected president of the United States, but we don't need to give him a state visit. And when we look at NATO and the fact he's threatening to annex Greenland, I think the real conversation we have to have right now is what does it look like to turn to our European neighbours and rebuild relationships that have been so badly damaged by Brexit, a catastrophic mistake, and actually go, what does it look like when we build new alliances based on peace and diplomacy? Now, the timescale for that could be 5, 10, 15 years. I'm not sure. That would be up to experts in geopolitics to come together. But the one thing I'm absolutely sure of is the world has never felt more unstable in our lifetimes as it does right now. And burying our head in the sand and pretending everything is going to be okay through an extensive use or might, as Keir Starmer says, and the £15 billion of nuclear weapons, it's absolutely absurd and perilously dangerous.
Now, I saw you on GMB earlier on today. They also ran with the Labour attacks. It was Ed Balls you were with, right? Ed Balls, who's married to Yvette Cooper, who was the Home Secretary, amplifies an attack from this government. It's utterly absurd. I mean, did you expect these attacks from the media so early on?
I did expect the attacks. We know that when they feel threatened, they will lash out. And the Green Party are there to challenge power and wealth in this country, to upend the status quo. And we know the status quo and the establishment that protects it will do everything they can to smear, to stop, to attack. And I think, that to a point is part of the political game. But also, these tactics worked a few years ago. I think we're in a fundamentally different time now. We know that people are sick of the two old parties and people are looking for difference. And so I think this is a huge moment to build the Green Left, to say we're going to look at doing politics differently. And the shamelessness of the interrogation, it's right that I'm scrutinised and it's right that I'm held accountable, but the fact that this is by a former shadow chancellor demonstrates many of the problems that there are with legacy media. And I'd naturally say this because I'm on Turn Left, but I think you guys are a key part of the solution. We need to build that ecosystem of politicians, of progressive movements, and of independent media that is not invested interest to multimillionaires and billionaires. And it's a good moment to say, if you can give a regular donation to Turn Left, I'm not paid to say this, but it's really important that we fund independent media because it plays a vital role in holding politicians to account. And that includes me, by the way. I don't expect special treatment, but anyone that you get across the radar, because that's actually how we're going to get a much better political system.
So there's obviously been a massive rightward shift. Far right politics is coming back in a big way. First of all, I want to get your response to that. What do you think? But also, do you have a message to people who feel like, especially minoritized communities, who feel like no one represents them or speaks up for them? I mean, Keir Starmer, for example, has thrown everyone under the bus, trying to chase the sort of mythical reform voters he's never going to get. So your response to this resurgence in far-right politics and your message to people who feel like there was no one speaking out for them.
Well, the first thing is we beat the fascists before in this country and we will absolutely beat them again, but we will only do it through community organising, through solidarity, through recognising that we are so much stronger when we are together than when people try and rip our communities apart. Second thing I'd say is that Keir Starmer should have condemned Nigel Farage's outrageous press conference the other day. Not only did he not condemn it, he implicitly condoned it. I don't get what he doesn't get about politics. If people want toxic, divisive politics and hatred about migrants, there is a party that exists that they can vote for. If people want bland, bureaucratic, technocratic triangulation, then sure, the Labour Party exists, but I'd suggest that might be why they're plummeting in the polls. But much more seriously, I would say to people who are scared right now, who feel like the world and the country is dangerous right now, or not just even feel it, it is dangerous right now, particularly if you're one of those people seeking asylum that has those protests right outside your hotel, that we have your back. The Green Party will always go out and bat for you. We will never, never abandon you. We will never take a different road just because the conversation is difficult. If you're a migrant, if you're trans, if you're disabled, if you're not in work, whatever it might be, all these groups that are so demonized. And if you're feeling politically homeless, then today is the day to join the Green Party. We have hit over 68,000 members. I'd love to see in the next week or two us hit even bigger targets and keep growing. So if ever you've been waiting for the moment to join the Green Party, take this moment right now at join.greenparty.org.uk.
Finally, I want to ask you, you've obviously been very much involved in independent media. Our audience are very familiar with you. I mean, even years ago when you were deputy leader, 2 years ago when we interviewed you, you've given us your time plenty. But you're now the leader of the Green Party. Tell me what your plans are to bring in sort of the use of independent media as part of the Green Party and also part of the left-wing machine, because we need to take on the establishment and the far right. I understand that you have started a podcast called Bold Politics.
Yeah, I'm really excited to launch that today. In fact, I'm the first political leader to have their own podcast. Each week, I'm going to be talking to people right across the political spectrum, people that I agree with and some people that I disagree with. At the beginning, it's largely going to be people that are famous and people that people know. But I also want to be really clear that my dream for the podcast is, as it builds its audience, I really want to actually platform workers' voices, people from marginalized communities' voices, and make sure their stories are out there too. Part of this is about setting the political agenda. I was just asked by a journalist, I thought it was a fair question. They said, is it not worrying, though, that if you're setting up your own podcast, you're trying to avoid scrutiny? And I want to be really clear that setting up the podcast is my way of setting the agenda. But I absolutely want scrutiny too. I'm still going to be going on people's podcasts. Don't worry, I'll be on Turn Left Media. And indeed, I'll be going to places that might be less friendly to me too, because I do think it's important as an elected politician, you are there to answer questions in a fair way about your record and what you intend to do. More widely, as leader of the Green Party, I'm really looking forward to working with the Media Reform Coalition. They're doing lots of work, particularly around political funding, funding of media, making sure that they're not in hock to vested interests, that the regulators have bigger teeth, or stronger teeth, sharper teeth, that's the word, and are really, really doing the job they need to do. And then I think there's a whole question about the BBC, something called the mutualisation of the BBC, which is accepting right now that the people who are on the board of the BBC or the chairs are chosen by governments. That's absolutely outrageous, because their job should be to hold the government to account. What mutualisation would look like is a group of people, probably decided by sortition. That's the same as a jury system, where it's randomly selected through the public, maybe for a year or 2 years. They are paid to sit on the board to scrutinise the output and check it is balanced, it is fair, and it is representing what people want in this country. I think there's a huge conversation to have around media, but I'm really pleased to see independent media is really having its moment, it's flourishing. I think the old media is crumbling, and it's time for these new voices.
Zack, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks, as always, Kurtz, for everything you do.
So that was Zack kindly giving me his time. Helena, what do you make of the attacks from Labour and the media? Do you think that any of it is going to land?
No, I really don't. I think that most people will see what it is as just lazy attacks on character because they can't contend on policy. I think that's the reality of this. I think the NATO attacks might actually land a bit harder than the hypnoboob stuff, because I think at a time of geopolitical insecurity and there's pretty large support for NATO in the UK, it may put more people off than it will win over. This is why when Jeremy Corbyn ran in 2017 and 2019, they maintained commitment to NATO, maintained commitment to Trident replacement, all that kind of malarkey. But the issue is that people are actually engaging with Zack's real point here. Like, Zack's real point here is that the replacement for NATO should be some kind of European defensive pact because we can't trust America. He's not saying don't have a defensive pact. He's not saying don't have any kind of agreement with which to ensure that there is some kind of mutual defense agreement with other countries with similar geopolitics, you know? He's not saying any of this. But what he is saying is that you can't trust Trump when he is being a belligerent, an explicit belligerent. Obviously, NATO has always been implicitly belligerent. That's why the Green Party platform at time of recording, as voted on by members, is NATO reform internally. Whereas, of course, the previous platform was to leave NATO in the 2000s, for example. So I think that it's an easy soundbite that they'll use to attack him and may win some people over, right? The soundbite will just be Polanski wants us to be a victim to Putin and Russia and China or whatever, when the reality is far more complex than that. But the hypnoboob stuff, I think people are going to see it for the lazy smear that it is, in the same way they lazily tried to smear Jeremy Corbyn in 2017 and failed.
Yeah, I probably agree. The NATO stuff feels like it might have more concrete stuff behind it, because obviously the NATO boob, the boob stuff. It's like, well, it's just like a bit of drama, and people don't really pay attention. But of course, this could be an opportunity for Zack to widen up the debate on our foreign policy. As I was saying before the interview clip, about how our foreign policy is so tied to America, there could maybe be a discussion there. I suppose that'll be potentially opening a can of worms. Does he want to go down that route? Or maybe just sort of ignore the attacks and focus mainly on eco-populism?
I think that's the right thing. Again, I liked during the interview that we saw there between Polanski and Balls. Polanski was like, no, let's talk about the issues that matter. Let's talk about the issues that matter to people, you know? Because at the end of the day, just when he said on the stage at his acceptance of the leadership on Tuesday morning, where he's explicitly like talking, these are the issues that I want to talk about affordability, about the cost of living, about the genocide in Gaza, the welfare state, all these things that the Labour Party are losing their base on. And I think it'll be very easy for him to win Labour voters over on that message, and by rising above the tittle-tattle of the media, especially when very few people actually pay attention to the mainstream media nowadays. This is why his point about independent media was so strong, and why we have to ensure that we have a much bigger platform to be able to fight the right wing on. Otherwise, their funding of an astroturfing of social media figures that was instrumental in getting Trump into the White House, for example, that they're trying to do in the UK with GB News and the like, will defeat us. We will not win in a landscape which is set by the big deep pockets of the right-wing funding. And and also, I think it's worth pointing out as well, like, if you're watching this show, it's you probably own a camera phone. It's very easy to just start making TikToks yourself. It's where a lot of the discussion happens nowadays. It's one of the most viewed social media apps in the country. It doesn't cost you anything to start talking about progressive policy. Start reposting stuff from people like Zack, from people like Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn, to talk about your opinions. Clip us, clip this show, clip my show, clip from Novara, from Politics Joe, whatever, and make sure that you're getting more of the information out in the sphere from the independent media to ensure that there are more voices than just Nigel Farage.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.